Good day everyone, Michael here again, back with another video. We're going to be talking about composting solid materials, okay? So you've got all this organic matter laying around, there's leaves in your yard, there's branches, there's twigs, you got a bunch of food waste you don't know what to do with. We're going to talk about how you can process that in a loving way to get the highest result to add to your living soil system. Now, from my experience and knowledge, there are three main kinds of solid composting. There's traditional composting, which is your greens and your browns, and you're turning piles and you're adding water and the thing gets very hot. You want to take it up to 180 and that kills all of the seeds of the undesirable plants. Some people call them weeds. Any kinds of meats or cheeses, kills off all kinds of stuff in there, and essentially what you're left with is a finished product of broken down material that is full of thermophilic bacteria, and we'll talk about that in future videos. The second is static composting. This is the lasagna method, and there's no turning involved. This is basically just making a pile of stuff, throwing everything in indiscriminately, letting it get rained on, letting time go by, and you're just adding more and you're not doing anything. There's no turning. You're not concerned about the green to brown ratios. You're just adding a bunch of stuff. You're letting nature do its thing, okay? The third is column composting. And this is where you use like chicken fence to create a column where all of your composted material goes inside, and now you've got a situation where you've got these columns of materials, okay? Now, what are the drawbacks and positives of the traditional composting? Well, traditional composting is a lot of work. And if you're a person that doesn't have access to a lot of material or maybe even some heavy equipment, I would actually recommend that you stay away from this. Leave it to the professionals. The professionals that have all the feedstock and the great equipment, they can handle all this stuff. And there's many people that produce excellent compost products. The static method is what I would recommend for most people. This is really just making piles of things. Over time, the piles will break down and will get richer. And you really don't have to do anything other than just pile a bunch of stuff up and just let it sit. Time scale here, maybe multiple years. You know, maybe 2 years, maybe 1 year. I'd say probably 2 years. You build up a big pile, stuff's in good shape. I did this on my own property. Excuse me. I did nothing special. All of my junk that I didn't use for anything on my property or in my soil making went back in one pile. And then after 2 years, I pulled everything out, harvested the pile, and spread it all around my property. And the stuff looked amazing. It was crumbly, it was dark, it was broken down, it had all kinds of insects and fungi in it. It was full of life. No turning, no monitoring temperature, just letting it go. That is the way that I feel that people should be going. The only drawback to this is it requires a little bit of the space, and you know, you're allocating a portion of your yard to a big you know, heap of potentially smelly organic matter for a little while. Now, the third method is column composting. This is a really interesting method that I learned about from some of my farmer friends up in Michigan. And what they do is they get all of their things together. The manures, the food waste, the greens and browns, the leaves, the twigs. They put it all together and they build these columns, okay? And then what they do is they inoculate the columns with fermented brews that they themselves create. So anyone can do this, and we'll talk more about this in the future. The drawback to this is that it dries out quickly, but a benefit is that it moves quickly. So if you can keep this thing hydrated and inoculated with the proper amount of material, it'll jam. Definitely the fastest of these three methods, but requires effort and energy, requires some understanding and knowledge of how to brew your own fermented microbial solution. The lasagna method, the static composting, is by far the easiest. It requires the least amount of thought, the least amount of energy. It all requires is that you are continually dumping material into one spot on your property. And then finally, the traditional composting method is the most energy intensive. It is the most challenging. It does produce great results, but many people experience frustrations when doing this. And I would really recommend leaving this here to the professionals, but there's a lot of room to explore for the average homeowner or horticulturalist to experiment with some of these methods on your own property to get the great results we're all looking for.